Fact number 1. The Great Moon Hoax of 1835. The world stood still when the New York Sun announced the discovery of life on the Earth's satellite. Reports described a civilization of bat people who built golden temples and flew among crystal mountains. Readers accepted this as absolute scientific truth. Physical receipts are found in the archives, where it is recorded that the newspaper circulation increased to 19,000 copies. This made the publication the most popular in the world in a single day. This was the first large-scale viral marketing in history, where a fake became a tool for capitalization. The publisher knew that truth does not sell as well as winged humans. Humanity believed in bat aliens before realizing that newspaper headlines are just a way to get into your pocket. The world bought a ticket to a moon that never existed. Fact number 2. The Great Stink of 1858. London turned into a giant cesspool due to abnormal heat and the lack of a sewage system. The Thames River was so clogged with sewage that Parliament could not hold sessions. The smell literally paralyzed the heart of the British Empire. Archive records of the House of Commons confirm that window curtains were soaked with a mixture of chloride of lime so that deputies would not lose consciousness from the stench. The elite ignored the engineering collapse for years while promoting the miasma theory. They believed that diseases were transmitted through smell and not through dirty water, because it was a cheap excuse for inaction. The British Empire was saved not by state sages, but by an unbearable smell under their own noses. It turned out that when it stinks of you personally, the marketing of helplessness ends. Fact number 3. Torches of Freedom of 1929. Edward Bernays turned smoking into a symbol of female emancipation in a single day. During the Easter parade in New York, a group of hired models demonstratively lit cigarettes in front of journalists' cameras. It was a perfectly staged performance. Internal reports of the Lucky Strike Company show that, after this action, the share of women among smokers rose from 5 to 12% in a matter of months. Bernays used the ideas of his uncle Sigmund Freud to link tobacco with the desire for power and independence. He sold lung cancer as the main trophy of feminism. When you see modern hype, remember that your most sincere feelings could have been designed by a psychoanalyst nephew for a corporate annual report. You are free only until the next commercial break. Fact number 4. The Dancing Plague of 1518. In Strasbourg, a woman named Tryphaea stepped into the street and began to dance uncontrollably. Within a week, dozens joined her. The city authorities, instead of a quarantine, decided that the sick just needed to dance it out. They built a wooden stage and hired musicians to play around the clock. Modern DNA analysis and historical records confirm mass psychosis caused by ergot poisoning. It is a fungus on rye that acts as a natural LSD, causing hallucinations and convulsions. This was a technical glitch of human biology under the pressure of famine and stress. The marketing of the time dubbed it the Curse of St. Vitus, although it was actually just dirty bread and panic. About 400 people danced until their hearts exploded from exhaustion. History remembered this as a strange event, but for the victims it was a fatal bug in the food system. Fact number 5. The Great Emu War of 1932. The Australian government declared a full-scale war on 20,000 birds that were destroying wheat crops. The army assigned 2 soldiers with Lewis machine guns and 10,000 rounds of ammunition. It was a PR campaign to show veterans that the state cared about their farms. Military reports of Major Meredith confirm a total failure. Emus turned out to be masters of guerrilla warfare, splitting into small groups and avoiding direct fire. More than 10 rounds were spent for every bird killed. The birds had such resilience that they continued to run even with several bullets in their bodies due to their anatomy. The British Empire won 2 world wars but surrendered to birds with brains the size of a walnut. Victory in marketing does not always mean victory on the battlefield. Fact number 6. The Great Molasses Flood of 1919. In Boston, a giant tank of molasses exploded, releasing a wave 8 meters high. The sweet wave moved at a speed of 56 kilometers per hour, sweeping away railway tracks and entire buildings. The molasses was so thick that people simply froze in it. Court documents of the time prove that the owner company knew about the leak. They painted the tank brown to hide the cracks through which molasses was constantly seeping. This was corporate greed disguised as maintenance. They decided it was cheaper to buy paint than to repair a structure that held 9 million liters of liquid. 21 people died in the sweetest nightmare in history. Boston smelled of molasses for another 30 years, reminding us that safety marketing is not the same as real safety. Fact number 7. The Whiskey War of 1984. For nearly 50 years, Canada and Denmark waged a territorial dispute over the uninhabited Hans Island, with an area of just over 1 square kilometer. Instead of deploying fleets, the Canadian military landed on the island, raised a flag, and left a bottle of Canadian whiskey. The Danes responded in kind, replacing the alcohol with their national schnapps. Official diplomatic dispatches confirm that this cycle repeated for decades. It was the most peaceful war in history, where the main tool of expansion was the marketing of national drinks. States used this conflict for internal PR, demonstrating the steadfastness of borders without a single shot. In 2022, they simply split the island in half, creating a shared border. History teaches that sometimes it is better to leave your enemy a drink than to spend billions on missiles. The marketing of neighborliness turned out to be cheaper than real occupation. Fact number 8. Acoustic kitty of the 1960s. During the Cold War, the CIA tried to turn an ordinary cat into a perfect cyborg spy for eavesdropping on Soviet embassies. Surgeons implanted a microphone in the ear canal, a transmitter at the base of the skull, and hid the antenna in the tail. The project cost American taxpayers $20 million. Declassified CIA documents of 1967 confirm that during the very first field test, the cat was released near a park in Washington to overhear a conversation on a bench. The plan failed in a second when the cat was hit by an ordinary taxi. The world's most expensive spy device was neutralized by a random driver before it heard a single word. The CIA officially admitted that cats are difficult to train for intelligence because they do what they want. The marketing of technological omnipotence crashed into biology and the wheel of a yellow car. Fact number 9. The Ghost Army of 1944. The USA created a special unit of 1,100 artists, designers, and sound engineers to deceive the Nazis. They used inflatable rubber tanks that could be blown up in minutes, and powerful loudspeakers that broadcast the sounds of entire divisions moving over a distance of 20 kilometers. Physical evidence of their success is recorded in intelligence reports, showing that the Germans moved entire regiments against an army that did not exist in reality. It was the marketing of war in its purest form. Actors wore fake patches and visited local cafes to spread disinformation about offensive plans. They sold the enemy the illusion of power using theatrical props. The Ghost Army saved tens of thousands of lives, proving that a well-sold lie is far more effective than a million real shells. The art of PR won the greatest battle of the century. Fact number 10. The Great Sparrow Campaign of 1958. Mao Zedong declared the birds enemies of the people for supposedly eating too much grain. This was ideological marketing where an enemy was found within nature. Millions of Chinese people beat drums and pots around the clock, preventing the birds from landing. Sparrows died of exhaustion, simply falling from the sky onto the heads of activists. Ecological reports later confirmed the disaster. Without sparrows, the locust population exploded and began destroying crops on a scale the birds never dreamed of. This was a technical miscalculation of the biological balance. The result was the Great Chinese Famine, which claimed at least 15 million lives. The government was forced to urgently buy sparrows from the Soviet Union to fix its own mistake. It turned out that nature does not read party slogans. The marketing of victory over birds ended in the greatest humanitarian disaster of the century, due to ignoring basic ecosystem rules. Fact number 11. The London beer flood of 1814. At the Horseshoe Brewery, a huge vat of porter exploded, releasing over 1 million liters of beer. A wave 4 meters high destroyed several houses in the poor districts of London. People drowned in their own favorite drink because the beer was too thick to get out of. Engineering expertise showed that one of the iron hoops of the vat was faulty, but it was not replaced to save costs. Corporate profit marketing turned out to be more important than construction safety. The court ruled the event an act of God, releasing the brewery from paying compensation to the families of the victims. This was legal marketing that shifted responsibility for a technical error to higher powers. 8 people died from the beer they usually bought for a penny a pint. History proves that sometimes your favorite brand can literally drown you to save on spare parts. Fact number 12. The 1904 Olympic Marathon. It was the strangest sporting event in history where only 14 of 32 athletes reached the finish line. The organizers wanted to test human endurance and specifically limited access to water on the 42-kilometer distance at a temperature of 32 degrees Celsius. Another participant, Fred Lords, drove 11 miles by car, won the race, and even managed to take a photo with President Roosevelt's daughter before the deception was revealed. This was not sport, but a marketing laboratory, where human life cost less than a beautiful headline about superpowers. Modern doping control began because athletes nearly died from rat poison. Fact 13. The spinach iron error of 1870. For decades, mothers forced children to eat spinach, believing in its fantastic power for muscles. The reason was German chemist Erich von Wolff, who mistakenly placed a decimal point in the wrong spot in his notebook. Spinach suddenly became 10 times healthier than any other vegetable. Marketers of the 30s used this fake to create the character of Popeye the Sailor. This was a state strategy to save farmers during the Great Depression through disinformation. Physical receipts confirm that spinach consumption in the States rose by 33%. This made spinach the first marketing superfood in history, built on a technical printing error. You ate grass because one scientist did not know how to place a dot. Your body is just another platform for realizing the marketing errors of the last century. Fact 14. The War of the Worlds of 1938. Orson Welles' radio play about a Martian invasion supposedly caused mass panic and chaos throughout the United States. In reality, the large-scale panic was a myth created by newspapers. Print publications feared that radio would take their advertising revenue, so they decided to discredit the new technology. An analysis of ratings that evening shows that only 2% of listeners tuned into Welles' wave. Most people of that time were watching variety shows and had not even heard of the Martians. Newspapers blew up a few random calls to the police into a national tragedy to portray radio as a dangerous and irresponsible source of information. The marketing war between media convinced you that your ancestors were fools who believed in aliens. In fact, they just became a victim of corporate PR 100 years before the invention of clickbait. Fact 15. The Erfurt latrine disaster of 1184. King Henry VI called a meeting of nobles at St. Peter's Church to resolve a land dispute. Under the weight of hundreds of elite knights in heavy armor, the wooden second floor could not hold and crashed down with a roar. The problem was that directly under the hall was a massive monastery cesspool filled with sewage over many years. Chronicles of the time confirm that about 60 barons and counts drowned not in battle, but in feces. The king survived only because he managed to grab onto an iron window. This was a technical collapse of architecture under the pressure of excessive ego. History remembers knights as heroes, but 60 of them ended their lives in the most unheroic way due to saving on the foundation. Fact 16. The War of the Stray Dog of 1925. The incident began when a Greek soldier crossed the border into Bulgaria while trying to catch his runaway dog. Bulgarian border guards opened fire, killing the soldier. Within days, Greece launched a full-scale invasion, occupying Bulgarian villages and demanding compensation for the honor of its army. League of Nations protocols confirm that this conflict threatened to escalate into a new Balkan War. Official receipts show that Greece was forced to pay £45,000 sterling in compensation for the aggression. This was a collapse of the marketing of territorial integrity, where a soldier's life and regional stability depended on the behavior of a random animal. State borders proved too thin for biological chaos. Humanity is ready to kill by the thousands over an imaginary line on a map that even a dog does not take seriously. History proved that one ill-timed bark is enough to start a war. The laughter was accompanied by attacks of pain, crying, and anxiety. The epidemic lasted 18 months, forcing authorities to close 14 schools and isolate entire villages in modern Tanzania. Medical journals of the time confirm that this was a mass psychogenic illness. Analysis indicates that the adolescent psyche simply broke under the pressure of cultural stress after the country gained independence. This was a technical glitch of biological marketing, where the brain chose laughter as a defensive reaction to trauma. The world sold freedom, but did not provide instructions on how to handle the social breakdown. The longest joke in history ended in a total economic collapse of the region and no answer whatsoever. It turned out that when the system is overloaded, laughter becomes the most terrifying weapon of self-destruction. Fact 18. The Battle of May Island of 1918. During exercises in the fog, the British Grand Fleet staged a large-scale disaster without a single enemy ship nearby. Due to communication errors and poor visibility, two submarines collided with each other. Then, a battlecruiser crashed into a submarine, and another ship rammed the lifeboats. Admiralty court records confirm the death of 103 sailors and the loss of two K-class submarines. This was a total collapse of the marketing of technological fleet coordination. Management sold these boats for years as the fastest in the world, but they were so complex and dangerous to operate that sailors called them suicide boats even before going to sea. Great Britain defeated its own army in record time, with 0 enemy losses. This proves that in the fog of war, your worst enemy is your own marketing department and incompetent engineering. Fact 19. Negative casualties of 1866. During the Austro-Prussian War, tiny Liechtenstein sent an army of 80 soldiers to guard a mountain pass. The soldiers spent several weeks at their post without firing a single shot. When the war ended, they returned home, but instead of 80 people in formation, there were 81. Archive records confirm that the 81st person was an Italian liaison officer who simply befriended the unit and decided to move to Liechtenstein. This was a collapse of military threat marketing. This is the only case in history where an army suffered negative casualties. While other empires sold death for territory, Liechtenstein accidentally sold citizenship through a shared dinner by the fire. If your survival strategy is based on befriending the enemy, you are either a genius or Liechtenstein in 1866. History proves that the best way to win a war is simply not to start it. Fact 20. The Pepsi corporate armada of 1989. Pepsi briefly became the owner of the world's 6th largest naval fleet thanks to a deal with the Soviet Union. Since the Soviet ruble had no value on the world market, the USSR paid for the drink syrup with a fleet of 17 submarines, a cruiser, a frigate, and a destroyer. The CEO of Pepsi joked that they were disarming the Soviet Union faster than President Bush. This was the peak of capitalism marketing, where soda proved more powerful than a nuclear superpower. Technical reports confirm that the fleet was obsolete and destined for scrap. Pepsi sold all the ships to a Swedish metal recycling company to recover their investment in sugar water. History has taught us that when an empire runs out of money, it is ready to give up its guns for a bottle of sugar. Today, you buy a drink, and tomorrow you might accidentally buy a small fleet. Fact 21. The drain hole to hell of 1980. In Louisiana, a calculation error turned Lake Peigneur into a giant whirlpool that sucked in everything around it. A Texaco oil rig accidentally pierced the roof of a salt mine located directly beneath the lake bed. A 14-inch drill bit created a hole that expanded to hundreds of meters in hours. 11 barges, a drilling rig, and acres of forest disappeared into the abyss. Water flowed backward from the Gulf of Mexico, creating the highest waterfall in Louisiana for 3 days. This was a technical failure of engineering marketing, where confidence in coordinates cost $45 million. Amazingly, no one died, although the freshwater ecosystem was deleted forever. When someone says math is not needed in life, remember Lake Peigneur. One error on paper can literally flush your world down the toilet in a single afternoon. Fact 22. The Pig War of 1859. The conflict between the United States and the British Empire began on San Juan Island, when an American farmer shot a black pig that was rooting in his garden. Since the island was disputed territory, the British threatened to arrest the farmer. In response, the U.S. Army landed the 9th Infantry Regiment under the command of Captain Pickett. Official Admiralty reports confirm that Britain sent 5 warships with 70 guns. For 12 years, 2 superpowers held each other at gunpoint over a single pig. This was a collapse of the marketing of territorial dignity, where diplomatic ego weighed more than common sense. The dispute was settled by German Kaiser Wilhelm I, who designated the island as U.S. territory. The only victim of this war for influence was a pig who just wanted to eat some potatoes. History proves that sometimes bacon is the only thing standing between peace and a global disaster. Fact 23. The Kettle War of 1784. Emperor Joseph II decided to open the Scheldt River for trade by sending 3 ships against the Dutch fleet. When the flagship Le Pan entered the mouth of the river, a Dutch ship fired only one single shot. This was the entire battle that was supposed to change the map of Europe. Archive records confirm that the cannonball hit a soup kettle right on the deck of the imperial ship. Aside from the pot, not a single person or structure was harmed. This was a collapse of the military power marketing of the Holy Roman Empire. Seeing their lunch destroyed, the crew immediately surrendered, and the claims to the river were withdrawn. History remembers the empire as a majestic force, but it surrendered to one pot of soup. Intimidation marketing does not work when you have an empty stomach and a leaky kettle. Fact 24. The Goldsboro Incident of 1961. A B-52 strategic bomber broke apart in mid-air over North Carolina, dropping 2 thermonuclear bombs. Each bomb was 260 times more powerful than the one that destroyed Hiroshima. Declassified documents from 1963 confirm that one of them went through 3 of the 4 activation stages. The world was saved by a single low-voltage switch that remained in the off position. All other safety systems, including the parachute and timer, were set for detonation. This was a collapse of the marketing of absolute nuclear weapons safety. The official Pentagon report admitted we were one step away from turning the U.S. East Coast into a radioactive wasteland due to a technical failure. You are alive only because one cheap switch did not break 65 years ago. History is not control, but a chain of accidents where your existence depends on one working piece of metal. Fact 25. The 1908 Around the World Race. 6 crews decided to drive the route from New York to Paris through the Bering Strait when most roads on the planet did not yet exist. Since there was no asphalt, participants drove for hundreds of miles on railroad ties, breaking suspensions and wheels. This was pure endurance marketing, where reality was a hell of mud and iron. In Siberia, drivers used bicycle race maps because no others existed. Physical receipts from race logs confirm that crews bought horses to pull their cars through the swamps. The German Protos crew was the winner, but they were disqualified because they traveled part of the distance by train. This was a collapse of the technological superiority marketing, where the railway proved more reliable than the internal combustion engine. The world believed in the future of cars only because reporters rewrote this hell into an epic adventure. Sometimes progress is just a well-edited report about getting stuck in the middle of nowhere. Fact 26. Project Cybersyn of 1971. In Chile, President Salvador Allende tried to create the world's first computer system for real-time economic management. The room looked like a set from a Star Trek movie, with screens showing the state of factories and resources. This was the peak of the visual marketing of a socialist future. The technical secret was that the screens were just frosted glass. Behind the wall sat people who manually changed slides with graphs when they received data via an ordinary teletype. This was a collapse of artificial intelligence marketing before its invention. The state sold the illusion of digital omniscience using 19th century technologies disguised as the 21st. If you see a beautiful dashboard, remember that behind it there may be a person with a flashlight and cardboard. History teaches that tech PR often precedes the technologies themselves by decades. Fact 27. The Football War of 1969. A military conflict between El Salvador and Honduras broke out after a series of World Cup qualifying matches. State media of both countries used sports for national hatred marketing to distract from land reforms and the economic crisis. Football became the perfect trigger. Official reports confirm that El Salvador launched airstrikes using passenger planes with bombs simply tied to them. This was a war of emotions wrapped in the packaging of sports fanaticism. 6 days of fighting claimed over 2,000 lives and left thousands homeless. This was a total collapse of the international brotherhood marketing through Olympic principles. When politicians need to sell you hatred, they use what you love most. History proves that a goal in someone else's net can cost the lives of an entire generation. Fact 28. The Bird Poop War of 1870. Chile, Bolivia, and Peru launched a bloody conflict for control over the Atacama Desert, where tons of guano had accumulated. Marketers of the time dubbed ordinary droppings as white gold. European farmers were ready to pay any amount of money for this natural nitrate to save their exhausted soils from famine. Official trade receipts confirm that guano exports made up 80% of Peru's income. This was the peak of resource marketing, where the state's wealth literally depended on the digestion of seabirds. The battle for excrement claimed the lives of 25,000 soldiers. This was a collapse of the territorial importance marketing, where empires fought for the right to collect nature's waste to save capitalism. Humanity is ready to die for crap if it is correctly labeled as white gold and packaged in a beautiful report. History teaches that your patriotism often ends where the bird poop business begins. Fact 29. The jumping tank of the 1930s. Soviet engineer Kulchitsky proposed a concept for a machine that was supposed to jump over enemy trenches at a speed of 100 kilometers per hour. This was the peak of Soviet invincibility marketing, where physics had to submit to the designer's will. The tank was equipped with a system of levers designed to toss the multi-ton structure into the air. Technical test reports confirm that during the very first jump, the tank rose 2 meters and fell apart into pieces upon landing. The impact energy was so great that the metal simply could not hold. Management sold this idea for years as the weapon of the future, ignoring the laws of momentum and mass. This was a collapse of fantasy marketing at state expense, where paper tolerated what the steel hull could not. You can build a jumping tank, but you cannot beat gravity. History proves that loud marketing of superpowers usually ends in a pile of expensive scrap in the very first ditch. Fact 30. The glass finger of 1999. The Mars Climate Orbiter spacecraft burned up in the atmosphere of the red planet due to a ridiculous software error. A NASA investigation confirmed that one group of engineers used the metric system while another used the imperial system. The computer simply confused pounds of force with newtons. This tiny discrepancy caused the craft to drop 90 kilometers below the planned orbit. $125 million turned into space dust in seconds. This was a collapse of the absolute precision marketing of space agencies. NASA had sold the image of perfect engineering for years, but forgot to coordinate units of measurement between two offices. History teaches that even the most complex rocket in the world is powerless against human carelessness. Your billion-dollar project can burn up just because someone did not know how to use a ruler. Fact 31. The mystery of the 38th parallel of 1945. When Japan surrendered, 2 American colonels were given only 30 minutes to decide the fate of the Korean peninsula. Without experts at hand, they used an old National Geographic map and simply drew a line along the 38th parallel. This was pure marketing of geopolitical convenience without any consideration for culture or terrain. Physical receipts from the U.S. State Department archives confirm that this hasty drawing forever separated millions of families. The colonels chose this line only because it looked visually symmetrical on paper. This was a collapse of the diplomatic wisdom marketing, where the illusion of order on a map caused the longest frozen conflict in history. The world accepted this brand of stability, wrapped in a random pencil stroke. When you see a border, remember that it could have been drawn by a tired official over coffee 30 seconds before a deadline. Your national identity may just be a byproduct of bad time management from the last century. Fact 32. The televised Olympics of 1936. The Third Reich tried to sell the world an image of technological superiority by launching the first ever live television broadcast of the Games. The problem was that the technology barely worked. The image was so blurry that viewers often could not distinguish an athlete from the background. This was the peak of progress illusion marketing, where form was more important than substance. Technical reports from the Telefunken company confirmed that the broadcast could only be watched in 25 special halls in Berlin. The cameras were so large, they were called television cannons. This was a collapse of ideological marketing through imagery. The Reich wanted to show the future, but in reality they created an expensive set that consumed a massive amount of energy for a few hundred viewers in dark rooms. The first broadcast in history was not about sports, but about gaslighting the planet. History teaches that even the most high-tech image can be just a screen for technical and moral emptiness. Fact 33. The WOW signal of 1977. Astronomer Jerry Amon recorded an unusual narrowband radio signal from space that lasted exactly 72 seconds. Amon circled the code in red pencil and wrote "WOW" next to it. This single sheet of paper became the main marketing tool for funding the search for aliens for the next 50 years. The problem is that the signal never repeated, despite hundreds of attempts to catch it again. Modern NASA data analysis indicates that it could have been radiation from hydrogen clouds around random comets. This was the universe's biggest marketing fail, where the human desire not to be alone turned a cosmic accident into a religious cult. We sold ourselves a conversation with the stars that turned out to be just an echo of ice and dust. If you really want to believe in a miracle, you will find it even in the noise of the void. History proves that sometimes a single letter on paper can make a planet wait for an answer that never was. You think history is a chain of logical events. You are wrong. History is the marketing department that survived. These are 33 times when archaeologists dug for legends and pulled out only dirty receipts and technical errors. We will show you rivers of mercury under tombs and screaming skull whistles of the ancient Aztecs. You will smell the feces of Hannibal's elephants and see how one confused inch destroys space missions. Humanity survived not thanks to wisdom, but thanks to blind luck and a well-timed lie. What you call reality in 2026 is just the next iteration of marketing chaos. Write in the comments the name of a leader or company whose mistake today will become the 34th fact on this list in 50 years. Subscribe to this channel. It is your insurance policy against ignorance.